So it is in this background when you are experiencing number of Arab Turkish invasions over India, and when they started settling down in India, how they intermixed with the Indian culture. That is why it is not called purely Islamic, and that is why we call it Indo-Islamic. We have seen n numbers of invasions over India. First of all, started by Arab, and then we have the Turkish invaders over India, when at last the first Muslim Sultanate of India actually emerged, which is called as the Delhi Sultanate under the slave dynasty established by Qutbuddin Aibak. Before we proceed on to start with the Indo-Islamic architecture, it becomes even much more important for us to understand that for which period you are studying it, that what is the political background of the period for which we are going to start with this type of architecture. But before we proceed on to start with the architectural details of this period, it is the time, my dear students, when the Arab and the Turkish people, they were invading India. As I told you in the very previous class of mine, that it was in the 8th century, to be very precise around 1117 to 1113, Al-Hajjaj, who was the ruler of Iraq at that time, during his time, some of the ships, they visited the Debol port of Sindh. The Debol port of Sindh was under the control of the ruler of Sindh, who was at that time Raja Dahir. And during his rule, these Arab ships were looted by sea pirates. And Al-Hajjaj, as we come to know from his autobiography, that he was always so much impressed with the prosperity of India that he always wanted to conquer it. Not conquer it, but he always wanted to take use of the wealth of India in order to motivate himself, or I would say in order to propagate Islam and make himself as the founder of the biggest Islamic dynasty over Central Asia. As I told you when I was going to start my medieval India, that every other dynasty in Central Asia, every other tribe in Central Asia, they just wanted to make themselves prominent. They just wanted to make themselves more important as far as the politics of Central Asia is concerned. Nobody at this time was thinking of establishing a full-fledged big empire in India, but they just wanted to use it. And it is the first time when the political weaknesses of India became much more projected before the world. And it is because of this incident which took place at Debol port, Al-Hajjaj wrote a letter to Raja Dahir that I want Raja Dahir to compensate me all the losses which have unoccurred or which have occurred during this incident. Raja Dahir said that, no sir, I do not have and I don't control these sea pirates. If something like that happened, I won't be able to compensate your losses. Al-Hajjaj was already thinking of some moral reason to attack India, and this incident became one of it. Al-Hajjaj sent his, I would say, nephew at that time, who was just 17 years old, Muhammad bin Qasim, as the commander of a large army, that you go and invade India. And this Muhammad bin Qasim, when he invaded Sindh, which was being ruled by Raja Dahir, he becomes the first Arabi Musalman to invade India. And at this point of time, the political weaknesses of India became much more projected before the world, and from time and again, from 8th century onwards, we have seen n numbers of invasions over India. First of all, started by Arab, and then we have the Turkish invaders over India, when at last the first Muslim Sultanate of India actually emerged, which is called as the Delhi Sultanate under the slave dynasty established by Qutbuddin Aibak in the year of 1213-1214. Qutbuddin Aibak, who was just a slave of Muhammad Ghori, he laid the foundations of it. And it is from this time period onwards we have seen number of structures that were being constructed in India in the Islamic form. However, these people who invaded India, they were coming from the altogether different set of background, altogether different kind of background as far as their culture, as far as their land is related, but they never tried to project it in a much more specific manner. Whenever they came to India and settled down in India, they just think of one thing, that they want to intermix what they have brought from their land with what is prevalent in the Indian background at this point of time. And that is why I have prepared this slide for you. It is around 7th and 8th century when the Islam as a religion started spreading towards India and Spain, and we are very much aware of it, that it is from this time period and even from the modern time period onwards, trade and commerce in India is actually flourishing. However, trade and commerce, it actually get a setback when it comes to the Gupta period, and yes, post Gupta period, when we experience the decline of urban centers. And this decline of urban centers is all because of the evolution of the Arab traders which were trading in the Persian Gulf region, and as a result of which Indian merchants and Indian traders were badly affected. So this is what this slide is trying to proclaim, this is what this slide will try to project. But as you read all these details with me, it is very much important for you as well that you please take account of what is actually going in India at this point of time, how Indian politicians and how Indian Rajput Rajas, they are actually getting affected, because it is the time period also of the tripartite struggle which we have experienced, which took place between Gurjara Pratiharas, Palas and Rashtrakutas. And we have already explained to you that how the origin of Rajputs it actually take place when Gurjara Pratihara kingdom declined. So it is in this background when you are experiencing number of Arab Turkish invasions over India, and when they started settling down in India, how they intermixed with the Indian culture. That is why it is not called purely Islamic, and that is why we call it Indo-Islamic, because we have seen that some of the elements of Islamic architecture mixed with Indian taste. That is why it is called Indo-Islamic. As you can read that it is in the 7th and 8th century common era when Islam started spreading to Spain and India. Islam actually came to India particularly with the merchants, traders, holy men and the conquerors over a passage of 600 years. It is all because of the trading and commerce. It is all because of trade and commerce when you are experiencing such peoples visiting India. Although by the 8th century, Muslims they had begun to construct their empires in Sindh, Gujarat. And why 8th century? Because here I am trying to project the invasions led by Muhammad bin Qasim, because it was in the 8th century when this man Muhammad bin Qasim invaded India. He captured Sindh and then other parts of I would say modern day Pakistan like Multan, and at last he entered India by the route of Gujarat. This is what Muhammad bin Qasim did. So by 8th century, these Muslims they had already begun to construct themselves very firmly in Sindh and Gujarat. But it was only in the 13th century. I am talking about the 13th century. Why? Because Qutbuddin Aibak is now coming. That the large scale building activity was begun by the Turkish state, which was established after the Turkish conquest of North India. Why 13th century? Because we know that it was around 1212 to 1214 when Qutbuddin Aibak, he is the one who is also called as the slave of Muhammad Ghori. He laid the foundation of slave dynasty over India, and the slave dynasty is termed as the first Muslim dynasty of India. Very important. And it is from this time period onwards when you are experiencing the large scale constructions which are taking place, whether it is Qutub Minar. With Qutub Minar and Chand Minar, we have the Minar like architecture evolving into India, and with this rulers, one more thing also became projected. Not only the minars but also the tombs were being constructed by these rulers, because construction of tomb was never seen before in India. It was never ever seen before in India. Construction of tombs, well embellished tombs, only started by these people in India, not by anyone. Be it Taj Mahal. What is Taj Mahal? Taj Mahal is just a tomb. Taj Mahal is not a temple. So tomb architecture and all such things are started by these people only. We have never ever experienced such things taking place in India before their arrival, and yes, before their empire building. A noteworthy aspect of these migrations and the conquest was that Muslims also absorbed many features of local culture, tradition, and combined them with their own architectural features. That is why this phase of architecture is called not just Islamic but Indo-Islamic. These architectural entities or categories showcasing multiple styles are known as Indo-Saracenic or Indo-Islamic architecture. Two names, but things are same. Whether you call it Indo-Islamic or Indo-Saracenic, both are same. It was by the 12th century when India was already familiar with the monumental constructions in settings. How it happened? Certain techniques and embellishments were already prevalent, such as the tribation technique. What is a tribation technique? It was already prevalent in India by around 11th century. And this tribation technique is a technique where we use the beam. We use the beam rather than the arches. Beam is being used. And this is the structure showing the tribation technique very, clearly. And according to the details which have been shown here, that how tribation technique was being followed in India, the tribation technique can be understood by dividing this structure into two things. The first is called post and the second structure is called lintel. The posts are the vertical objects, whereas the lintel is the horizontal. Is a horizontal aspect of the tribation. As you can see in the structure, the two pillars and a beam over it. Here the beam is called I would say lintel, whereas the pillars, which are the two vertical object here, they are called post. And in this way, this lintel post technique, which is also called as tribation style of architecture, it used to support a small roof and sometimes of small dome also. But the start of arches in India, you have seen well embellished arches, it is actually taking place when these people are coming into India and settling down. This is something of their significance. That is why it is very much important. However, the arches, as I already told you, the arches in the early constructions were actually shaped in wood and stone, and they were unable to bear the weight of the dome or top structures. We have already seen the arches which were being made out of stone. I have shown it in various number of chaityas. I told you in the chaityas a horse shoe like arch was being constructed. Do you remember in which of the chaitya we experienced the construction of horseshoe arch? Yes, the answer is very much correct. The horseshoe arch we had experienced when we were talking about the Bhaja caves. Although these arches were unable to bear the dome weight and heavy roof. That is why it is very much important. That is why I mentioned that there were some constructions which took place of arches as far as they are concerned in stone or wood. But such kind of arches were unable to bear the weight of the dome or the top structure over it. And such example of a horseshoe arch, as I told you, was experienced in Bhaja caves. Such arches, they needed to be constructed with the interlocking block technique. And what do you mean by the interlocking block technique, which is fitted by the keystone in the middle? See how these early arches were actually constructed. As you can see in this image, every brick which you are able to see in this diagram, every big brick is laid out in such a pattern of interlocking that they are providing the strength to the brick of or to the stone which is lying over and above it. However, a bigger stone which is called a keystone is prepared and is actually established in between. In this way, some arch-like thing was constructed, but such kind of arches were actually not able to support the heavy weight of something like a dome or some top structures. They were not able to support heavy weights. So these, or I would say this is the start of the technique which is called an arch. And in this arch, the use of interlocking bricks and keystone was something which is very much important. The study of Indo-Islamic architecture is conventionally categorized as, when you study the Indo-Islamic architecture, we generally divide the Indo-Islamic architecture into 4 subparts. The first is called the imperial style, and the imperial style of architecture was showed by Delhi Sultanate. The second is called the provincial style. And the provincial style of architecture, it is actually studied with the breakup of Delhi Sultanate and emergence of number of states, which you experienced with me when we were studying the disintegration of Delhi Sultanate. And when Delhi Sultanate disintegrated and when the power centers began to emerge in different parts of India, under their rule, regional architecture became prominent, which is called provincial architecture, as shown by Mandu, Gujarat, Bengal and Jaunpur. The third is called Mughal style. You all know how these provinces were captured by the Mughal rulers with the passage of time before establishing their unified control over India. And yes, Mughals, as far as Delhi, Agra and Lahore is concerned, Mughal style of architecture becomes much more prominent. In the Deccani style, Bijapur and Golconda are very famous. During the time of Aurangzeb, we experienced it. Amongst the provincial style, the architecture of Bengal and Jaunpur is actually regarded as something unique. Gujarat was said to have a marked regional character for the patterns borrowed elementally from the regional temple traditions, such as the construction of torans. We have seen the construction of torans, the construction of lintels in mihar, or the construction of the lintels in mihrabs. What are these mihrabs? A niche in the wall of a mosque at the point which is very much nearest to the Mecca, towards which of the congregation faces to pray. If you enter a mosque, there will be a structure facing which you generally read your namaz, and that is called mihrab. In that mihrab like structure, you were using the lintels like this, a 2 pillar and a horizontal dome in between, above it. This is how these mirhabs were being constructed as far as Gujarat is concerned.